Hudson Taylor, A Life of Faith and Trust in God. James Hudson Taylor was a man who trusted God completely. His story is a powerful testimony of how faith in Jesus can transform a life and impact an entire nation. But his journey wasn't easy. It was a life of sacrifice, trials, and unwavering trust in God's promises. Hudson was born in England in 1832. His parents were strong Christians, but as a young man, he struggled with doubt. He had heard the gospel many times, but it felt distant, just words, not reality. However, his mother never stopped praying for him. One day, while she was away, she felt a strong burden to pray until she knew her son had surrendered to Christ. At that exact moment, Hudson was at home reading a gospel tract. The words, "The finished work of Christ," suddenly struck his heart. He realized salvation wasn't about his own efforts. It was about trusting in Jesus' completed work on the cross. Right there, he knelt down and gave his life to Christ. Soon after, he felt a deep calling to China. Millions had never heard the gospel, and his heart burned to reach them. But how would he go? He had no money, no support, and no missionary training. The only thing he had was faith. Hudson decided to prepare himself by living simply, giving away his money, eating plain food, and trusting God for daily provision. He worked as an assistant to a doctor, learning medical skills that would help him in China. One day, his employer forgot to pay him. Hudson had no money for food, but instead of asking, he prayed. Days passed, and he grew weak from hunger. But just when it seemed hopeless, the doctor suddenly remembered and gave him his wages. That moment taught Hudson an important lesson. God never forgets his children. In 1854, Hudson finally arrived in China. He was just 21 years old, alone in a foreign land filled with danger, poverty, and spiritual darkness. At first, he stayed in foreign settlements where most missionaries lived, but he quickly realized that the Chinese people saw missionaries as outsiders. If he wanted to reach them, he had to become like them. So he made a radical decision. He dressed in Chinese clothes, shaved his forehead, and grew a long braid like Chinese men. Other missionaries criticized him, but it opened doors. People began to listen to him, and many came to Christ. But it wasn't easy. He often went without food. He faced violent opposition. Once, an angry mob attacked him, throwing stones. Disease was everywhere, and he became dangerously sick multiple times. Yet he never gave up. He had surrendered his life to God, and he trusted Him completely. There were moments when his money ran out. No one knew his struggles, yet just when everything seemed lost, provision would come, sometimes from believers far away, sometimes from strangers who had no idea they were answering a prayer. As the years passed, Hudson's burden grew heavier. There were millions in China who had never heard about Jesus. He knew he couldn't reach them alone. He prayed for more workers, 24 missionaries who would join him in faith without any guaranteed support. It seemed impossible. But God moved. One by one, missionaries came, then more. By the time of his death, over 800 missionaries had joined his mission, bringing the gospel deep into China. Thousands of churches were planted, and countless lives were changed. Hudson Taylor's life was built on one truth: God's work done in God's way will never lack God's supply. He proved that when we trust in Jesus completely, He leads us, provides for us, and works through us to bring others to Him. Maybe you feel uncertain about the future. Maybe you face struggles that seem impossible to overcome. Maybe you're searching for meaning, wondering if God is real and if He has a plan for your life. The truth is, He does. Just like Hudson Taylor discovered, when you put your trust in Jesus, everything changes. God is faithful. He is calling you to trust Him to surrender your worries, your fears, and your life into His hands. So the question is, will you trust Him today?